Doctor, I was wrong. Please save my daughter. She is dying. What happened? Tell me her symptoms. Her chest is tight. She is unable to breathe. Please hurry up. I'm on it. Stay with me.
She demanded the nurse be fired in front of everyone, but she'd never imagined she'd be begging that same nurse to save her child. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and authority, polished floors, white walls, a place where life and death moved quietly behind closed doors, and in the center of it stood a woman dressed in precision-tailored coat, diamond earrings, catching the fluorescent light, pointing a finger like a verdict. I said, fire her right now. Patients stared from wheelchairs. A child clutched a stuffed animal. Nurses froze mid-step. The air shifted from clinical calm to courtroom spectacle. Across from her stood the nurse. No raised voice, no trembling hands, just steady eyes and a posture built from years of 12-hour shifts and thankless nights. She had simply explained hospital policy: oxygen levels had to be monitored continuously. Medication timing could not be adjusted without authorization. Safety wasn't optional, it was protocol. But to the woman with money and connections, protocol felt like defiance. You don't tell me what my daughter needs, the mother snapped. Do you know who I am? The nurse did not answer that question. She answered the one that mattered. I know your daughter needs stability, and I'm here to make sure she gets it. That calm only made the humiliation louder. The mother laughed, sharp and performative. Incompetent. That's what you are. I want administration. Now. Phones appeared. Whispers spread. In a country where immigrant women in scrubs often carry entire hospital floors on their backs, dignity is rarely defended as loudly as ego. The nurse stood alone while the spectacle grew. Security arrived first, then a hospital administrator with a tight smile and tighter calculations. The mother spoke of lawsuits, of media contacts, of donors, of making this hospital regret ever hiring people who don't know their place. The nurse said nothing, because she knew her place at the bedside in the charts. In the quiet spaces where lives are measured in breaths, not bank accounts, but influence speaks faster than truth. I'm so sorry, the administrator muttered, not meeting her eyes. The badge was UNCLIPPED. It made the smallest sound when it left her uniform. A plastic snap. A career reduced to a gesture. Staff looked down. One nurse blinked back tears. A young intern shifted uncomfortably. No one intervened. Power had made its choice. The mother adjusted her coat, victorious. That's what I thought. Liness walked down the hallway she had walked 1,000 times before. Not defeated, not angry, just quiet, as if she understood something no one else did. Hours later the silence shattered. An alarm pierced the floor. Then another. Footsteps pounded. A crash of metal against tile. And the same woman who demanded control now screamed in terror. Somebody help her, she's not breathing. Inside the room monitors flashed red. Oxygen levels plummeted. Doctors rushed in, voices overlapping, hands scrambling for answers that refused to come. Control evaporated. Power meant nothing, and somewhere beyond those hospital doors, the nurse who had just been escorted out was walking to a car, unaware that the life hanging in the balance belonged to the child she had tried to protect. But what no one in that hallway knew was that the nurse she had just destroyed was the only person who understood what was about to happen to her daughter, hours earlier. Before the alarms, before the screaming, the hospital floor had been steady, predictable, controlled. The nurse stood beside the young girl's bed, reviewing the monitor with quiet focus. Oxygen saturation slightly unstable. Nothing dramatic, not yet, but enough of someone experienced to pay attention. She adjusted the flow carefully. We need to keep her levels consistent, she explained gently. And the next dose has to, if stay on schedule. Even a small delay could stress her system. It was not a command, it was care. The mother, seated in a leather chair she'd insisted be brought in, looked up from her phone. I told the last nurse we're spacing the medication out. She doesn't like how it makes her feel. I understand, the nurse replied calmly. But with her respiratory sensitivity, timing is critical. Her body compensates until it can't. We don't want to push it. That word critical landed wrong. Are you implying I don't understand my own daughter? No, the nurse said evenly. I'm saying her condition requires precision. The girl coughed softly in the background. A thin, fragile sound. The nurse noticed. She stepped closer to the monitor, watching the subtle dip, the tiny fluctuation most would ignore. Years of night shifts had trained her eyes to see what machines only hinted at. She had worked holidays while others opened gifts, missed birthdays, slept in break rooms between double shifts during flu seasons that swallowed entire cities. She had held hands when families couldn't bear to look. She did not raise her voice because she did not need to. But calm can feel like defiance to someone used to being obeyed. The mother stood. You people always hide behind policy. My daughter is uncomfortable and you're lecturing me about timing. It's not a lecture, the nurse answered. It's protection. A couple in the hallway slowed their steps. A resident glanced inside. Tension has a sound low, tightening, Contagious. I want a different nurse, the mother said sharply. That's your right, the nurse replied, but a care plan remains the same. And there it was. Not submission. Not apology. Boundary. The mother's expression hardened. Do you know how much we donate to this hospital? The nurse met her gaze without hostility. My responsibility isn't to donations, it's to her lungs. A phone camera lifted from the doorway. Whispering began. Someone muttered, "What's happening?" The mother seized the moment. "This is exactly the problem," she declared, voice rising for the audience forming. "Incompetence, arrogance." He refuses to listen. The nurse did listen. She simply would not bend science to ego. "I'm following the physician's orders," she said, steady as ever. "An established respiratory protocol." The girl coughed again, slightly sharper this time. The nurse saw the pattern, the subtle tightening around the child's ribs, the way her breaths were beginning to shorten at the edges. It was small, almost invisible, but it was there. "We should avoid unnecessary stimulation," she added quietly. "Stress can trigger constriction." That suggestion felt, to the mother, like blame. "So now you're saying this is my fault?" "I'm saying calm helps." Her breathe the hallway had grown crowded now. Nurses pretending to check charts, visitors lingering, a security guard shifting his weight. Power hates to feel corrected. The mother stepped into the corridor, voice sharpened for maximum reach. "I will not be spoken to like this. Get administration." When the administrator arrived, the story had already been shaped. A grieving, concerned mother, an uncooperative nurse, a hospital that must protect its image. The nurse did not defend herself theatrically. She stated facts. Oxygen levels fluctuating, medication timing critical. Observed early respiratory strain. The administrator nodded politely and glanced at the gathering phones. Reputation moved faster than fairness. "Think it would be best," he began carefully, "if we reassigned you for now?" "For following protocol?" she asked. "For de-escalation." Security stepped closer. She removed her badge without resistance. Around the corner, two nurses exchanged looks. Later that afternoon, their phones would light up with quiet messages. She didn't deserve that she was right about the oxygen. Inside the room, the girl shifted again in her bed. The monitor flickered almost imperceptibly, and as the nurse walked away, carrying years of invisible sacrifice in the straight line of her spine, she held on to one uneasy realization, because the one thing the mother didn't realize was that the nurse had already seen something no one else had. The automatic doors slid shut behind her with a soft mechanical sigh, as if the building itself were relieved to be rid of controversy. The nurse stepped into the late afternoon air and let it fill her lungs slowly. Cool, honest, unfiltered. She walked to a car without rushing. Humiliation burns, but it does not always break. Years of proving yourself in rooms that underestimate you builds a different kind of armor. She sat behind a steering wheel, placed her badge on the passenger seat, and stared at it for a long moment. Plastic and ink. Years of service reduced to something removable. Her hands trembled once. Just once. Then they steadied. Inside the hospital. The hallway returned to its rhythm. Doors closing. Shoes squeaking softly against polished floors. The spectacle was over, or so everyone thought. In the private room at the end of the corridor, the young girl lay propped against white pillows. The television murmured softly. Machines blinked impatient, in different cycles. Her breathing shifted. It was subtle. A slight pause at the end of each inhale. A faint tightening at the base of her throat. The kind of change that whispers before it screams. A junior nurse adjusted the foreline and glanced at the monitor. "She's probably just anxious," she said lightly. "It's been a stressful day." The girl nodded weakly. Across the room, her mother sat scrolling through a phone, fingers moving with decisive certainty. A post was already live. "No one should tolerate incompetence in healthcare. I stood up for my child today." Notifications chimed. Support poured in, applause in digital form. Strong mother Bray. "You did the right thing," she exhaled. Vindicated behind her. The monitor flickered again. In the parking lot, the nurse rested her forehead against the steering wheel. Not in defeat, in thought. She replayed the chart in her mind. The microfluctuations, the tightening ribcage, the sensitivity to airborne irritants. She had seen this pattern before. Once during a winter surge. Another time with a child who reacted to something as ordinary as scented disinfectant. Compensation. Then collapse. She reached for her keys. Inside the room. The girl's breathing shortened further. The junior nurse frowned now. "Take a slow breath for me," she encouraged. The girl tried. The inhale stuttered. The monitor emitted a sharper tone. The mother turned. "What was that?" "It's fine," the nurse replied quickly. "Just a small dip." But the dip did not correct. Numbers began to slide downward with quiet determination. 90-4, 90-2. The air in the room thickened in the hallway. A resident noticed the change on the central screen. "Room 12, he called out. Back inside, the girl's chest rose faster now. working harder for lesser turn. Her fingers curled into the sheets. Why is she breathing like that? The mother demanded, standing. It could be a delayed response, the junior nurse said, though uncertainty crept into her voice. The monitor beeped again. Louder. 80-9. The resident entered. Then another nurse. Oxygen flow was increased. A mask adjusted. Instructions layered over one another. Come on, someone whispered. The girl's eyes widened, panic reflecting in them like light on water. The mother stepped back, stunned. Fix it, she said, but it no longer sounded like a command. It sounded like a plea in the parking lot. The nurse's phone buzzed in the cup holder. She glanced at the scream. Hospital. She hesitated and sighed. Confusion swelled. The oxygen mask fogged rapidly as the girl struggled. A doctor arrived, scanning vitals, issuing clipped orders. Why is she not stabilizing? No one answered. 80-5. The mother felt something unfamiliar rise in her throat. Fear without leverage. I said you said she was stable, she whispered, voice breaking. We're working on it, the doctor replied, already moving toward more aggressive intervention in the corridor. Staff exchanged glances heavy with unspoken truths. Mentioned sensitivity, one nurse murmured. 2. What? Another asked. I don't know, something environmental. The administrator stood near the doorway, face pale, pride warred visibly with reality. In the parking lot the phone buzzed again. Longer this time. The nurse closed her eyes briefly and sighed. The girl's breaths became shallow pools against invisible resistance. The monitor's beeping quickened, then sharpened. 80-2. The mother moved toward the bed, gripping the railing. Baby, breathe, she whispered, tears spilling freely now. The audience from earlier was gone. No phones raised. No applause. Waiting. Just a child, fighting for air. Prepare for intubation, the doctor ordered. The words sliced through the room. The mother looked around wildly. Isn't there someone else? Someone who knows her case? Silence answered first, then a quiet voice from the doorway. We should call her back. The suggestion landed like a confession. The administrator stiffened. We can handle this. Another dip on the monitor. 80. We don't have time, the resident insisted. In the parking lot. The nurse picked up her phone but did not answer. She watched the hospital building through the windshield, lights glowing behind glass like distant stars. Inside that building, a child's body was exhausting its reserves. Inside that building, influence meant nothing. Inside that building, the absence of one calm voice was suddenly deafening. The mother's composure shattered completely. Please, she sobbed, do something. And just as the oxygen level hit its lowest point, someone made the call they swore they never would. Asterisk. The phone vibrated a third time. She stared at the screen until it stopped. Then it rang again. For a moment, there was only silence inside the car. Not anger, not vindication. Just the weight of a choice, the kind that defines who you are when no one is applauding, she answered. The voice on the other end tried to sound professional, but urgency cracked through. We need you back. Her oxygen is crashing. We can't stabilize her. Brief pause. What changed? She asked. We're not sure. She closed her eyes, seeing the chart in her mind. The fluctuations, the sensitivity, the almost invisible warning. I'm coming, she said. No triumph, no hesitation. She started the engine and turned the car around. Inside the hospital room, chaos tightened like a fist. The doctor stood at the bedside, gloves snapped into place. A tray of intubation equipment clattered against metal rails. Prepare to secure the airway, he ordered. The girl's breaths were thin, uneven pulls against a narrowing passage. Her chest strained. The oxygen mask fogged rapidly, then cleared too slowly. Her mother gripped the edge of the bed, hair falling loose from its perfect arrangement. Please, she whispered, to no one and everyone. Please, fix it. No one looked powerful anymore. The administrator hovered near the doorway, watching the numbers drop again. 70-8. A nurse adjusted the oxygen flow higher. Another checked the 4 line. The resident scanned the chart in confusion. We're missing something, he muttered. Then the doors opened. The shift in the room was immediate. Not loud, not dramatic, just a recalibration. She stepped inside wearing the same scrubs, the same composure, as if humiliation had not tried to strip her of both. Her eyes moved first to the monitor, then to the girl's chest, then to the equipment arranged around the bed. What changed in the room? She asked calmly. No one answered at first. The scent hit her, before the explanation did. Sweet, artificial, lingering. She glanced toward the counter. A new sanitizer bottle, recently placed, strongly fragranced. Who switched the disinfectant? She asked. A nurse blinked. Facilities replaced it this afternoon. The mother stared at her, stunned into silence. The nurse stepped closer to the bed, her voice steady. She has a documented sensitivity to airborne irritants. It was mild before. Its stress amplifies it. The doctor hesitated. Do you think this is environmental? I know it is. 75. Remove the sanitizer, she instructed. Now, open the window vent. Lower the oxygen flow slightly too high, can dry and constrict further. Elevate her left side. Slowly. There was no debate this time. Hands moved quickly. The bottle disappeared. Air circulation shifted with a mechanical hum. The girl was repositioned with careful precision. Easy, the nurse murmured to the child, adjusting the mask seal. You're okay, let your lungs catch up. The girl's breathing remained shallow for a suspended second that felt like an eternity. 70-4. That mother covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. Come on, the nurse whispered. 70-6. Slight deepening of breath. 70-8. The room held itself perfectly still. 80-1. The doctor lowered his hands slowly, watching the monitor climb. 80-4. The girl inhaled again, longer this time, less frantic. Her shoulders eased. 80-8. A collective exhale rippled through the room as if everyone had been holding their own breath alongside. Her. 90-1. Color returned faintly to the child's cheeks. The rigid tension in her small hands loosened. 90-4. Stabilizing. The nurse kept her focus on the rhythm of the girl's chest, counting silently, adjusting minutely, refusing to celebrate too soon. By the numbers held. Normalizing the crisis that minutes earlier threatened to steal everything began to retreat. The room felt different. Now, quieter, smaller, humbled, the mother's eyes lifted slowly and locked onto the woman she had publicly dismantled hours before. There were no speeches waiting in that gaze. No defense, no accusation, just recognition. Recognition of competence, recognition of restraint, recognition of the unbearable truth that the person she tried to erase had just preserved the most important life in her world. Tears streamed down her face, but this time they carried something heavier than fear. Shame. Relief. Gratitude colliding in real time. Around them, staff members stood in stunned silence. The same phones that had recorded the confrontation earlier now remained lowered. No one dared turn this moment into spectacle, because what they were witnessing was not just medical intervention, it was moral clarity. The nurse adjusted the blanket gently around the girl's shoulders and stepped back once the breathing settled into a steady, sustainable rhythm. She'll need monitoring, she said, evenly, but she's stable. No gloating, no edge, just fact. The doctor nodded, humbled. The administrator avoided her eyes entirely, and in that sterile hospital room, power rearranged itself with that announcement. The woman who once commanded the hallway now stood speechless. The woman who was escorted out now stood indispensable. But the real reckoning wasn't about what happened in that hospital room. It was about what happened after. The mother's hands shook as she approached the nurse. Words formed and crumbled in her throat. She had demanded control, wielded influence, and humiliated someone she thought powerless. Now, standing in a hospital room heavy with quiet, the truth pressed down on her chest. I'm sorry, she said finally, voice breaking. I shouldn't have. The nurse listened, expression steady, neither triumph nor scorn. She nodded once, a simple acknowledgement, letting the apology exist without needing to be accepted for revenge or satisfaction. She understood humility as action, not as a performance. I didn't come back for you, the nurse said softly, eyes on the girl whose breathing had returned to calm. I came back for her. The mother lowered her gaze, shame twisting into something unfamiliar, gratitude mingled with remorse. Every fiber of entitlement she had relied on moments before now felt hollow, meaningless. She had wielded power recklessly and discovered its limits. News of the incident spread quickly. Staff whispered in corridors, their phones alive with messages and social media posts. The story, raw and human, went viral among healthcare communities and neighborhood groups. Debates ignited online. Entitlement versus service, ego versus care, influence versus integrity. People marveled at the nurse's restraint, the clarity of her choices, and the unshakable dignity she had maintained under assault. The hospital administration acted decisively. The nurse was reinstated publicly. A formal apology circulated among staff. The badge returned to her uniform, a symbol not only of position but of a lesson, painfully learned by all who had witnessed the events. But the nurse did not celebrate. She returned to her work, quietly, methodically. The accolades mattered less than the breathing of one small child. Service over pride, always. The mother, transformed by experience and reflection, took steps to make amends beyond the hospital walls. She began advocating for healthcare workers publicly, speaking at community gatherings, posting awareness messages, emphasizing respect, empathy, and the value of professional dedication. She acknowledged her mistake openly, her voice carrying humility she had never possessed before. Within the hospital, the ripple effect was profound. Colleagues approached the nurse differently, more respect grounded in earned trust. The moral clarity of her actions created a new standard for interaction, for decision-making under pressure. Social media followers commented, applauded, debated, and shared, spreading the story of restraint, courage, and the power of principled action. And yet, at the center of it all, the lesson was personal: humility over ego, service over pride, dignity under pressure. True strength is restraint, the kind that does not boast, does not retaliate, and does not flinch in the face of entitlement. In the quiet moments after the media storm faded, the mother returned to the girl's room, watching her breathe steadily, cheeks flushed with recovery. She understood, finally, that control is not the possession of those who demand it, but the effect of those who act when it is needed most, without expectation, without audience, without audiency, without self-interest. She thought power meant dominance, influence, visibility, but that day she learned a truth far more profound. Real power is quiet, decisive, and righteous. Real power is the person who shows up when you don't deserve it. Her eyes met the nurse's once more, lingering in mutual understanding. Words were unnecessary. Respect had been earned in a way neither could forget, and the hospital, the staff, the girl, and even the mother carried that lesson forward, one breath, one choice, one act of integrity at a time.